A warm, pleasant good evening from the Oklahoma City Museum of Art as the Oklahoman is hosting tonight a GOP Forum. I'm Dave Morris alongside my colleague, Mr. Chris Casteel. Chris, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Dave.
You have been on the beat for the Oklahoman all year long, covering the candidates, all the candidates, 15 total, who are running for the 2018 gubernatorial bid later this year. We'll see 6 of them on the stage tonight. What have you seen so far? Where all have you guys been across the state?
Yeah, I've been north, south, east, and west. I would say I haven't covered all 15. Some of them just showed up at filing a couple of weeks ago. Didn't know that they were there. But I've been to many events with the 6 that we're going to see tonight. Mick Cornett, Todd Lamb, Gary Jones, Gary Richardson, Kevin Stitt, and Dan Fisher. Fisher's the Yukon pastor has just really started kind of engaging with the rest of the crowd. But I've seen these guys in the Crowder near Lake Eufaula. I've seen them in Altus, Lawton, Bartlesville.
Can't
Tulsa,
say I've ever been to Crowder.
Enid, Chickasha. I've been to Chickasha many times.
Chickasha is a good place.
Duncan last week.
Is there a good place to eat in Crowder? Do you know, now that you've been there?
I can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
It's a man on deadline right here. He didn't
I
have time
haven't had
to check out the
Chowder
cafe.
and Crowder.
Well, those are the 6 candidates we'll be seeing on stage tonight, and already in the audience, you see the various candidates with a lot of support out there.
There are. They've brought their boosters for sure. But hopefully they'll be restrained. That's my hope. It's
about 9 weeks away. You have had considerable coverage in the Oklahoman and online on our website, newsok.com, leading up and throughout the campaigns. But now I think people are starting to get serious. You wrote that perhaps name recognition has been a stretch for some of these candidates, but now's the time perhaps they get serious.
I think people are going to start paying attention. Filing was a huge deal. I mean, it's kind of an unofficial, beginning for some candidates. Kind of we're really in campaign season now. These guys, some of them have been campaigning for a year. I think some announced in April, May. I think the latest of this group to announce is actually in August. So they've been on the road for months. I think that people, the wider audience, I think, is coming down the next few weeks. Primaries June 26th. So yeah, like you said, we're not far out from it. So
he's reading my mind, ladies and gentlemen. The primaries, as you mentioned, June 26th.
Primary runoffs August 28th. So
primary runoff on August 28th. General election,
this
of course,
race
in November.
This GOP gubernatorial race is undoubtedly going to a runoff. There's so many with good political bases that it's going to be hard for any one of these candidates to get 50% plus 1 vote.
Provide us an education on the mechanics of how this works, Chris. Tonight we see 6 candidates on stage. There's actually 10 on the GOP side. But how does it work? How do you get to the runoff? Things like that. What do people need to know?
The top 2 finishers in the primaries of any kind of race, whether it's, we have some really crowded legislative races, really crowded congressional races. So the primaries are all Republican or all Democratic candidates or all Libertarian. And the top 2 finishers, if nobody gets 50% plus 1 vote, top 2 finishers are then competing for the runoff 2 months down the line to decide the nominee.
You'll be seeing Chris Casteel's coverage on the front page of tomorrow's editions of the Oklahoman, also online at newsok.com. I suspect you'll be tweeting throughout tonight's event.
Well, I hope so.
At NewsOK Politics is how you can follow this gentleman. On the stage, the Oklahoman has a cast of 4 very qualified reporters. Ben Feller will be moderating alongside Carla Hinton and Adam Wilmoth from the religion and oil and gas energy sector, if you will. And Justin Wingerton will be monitoring those internet questions, so be sure to fire those out there if you're watching online. I should also say that we're capturing tonight's debate in its entirety, so you'll be able to watch this on demand if you so choose later tonight, beginning tonight once we post it. Let's rock through these 6 candidates that we'll be seeing tonight, and we'll go in alphabetical order as you mentioned them, of the 6 things to watch in your article today. The former mayor, Mick Cornett.
Mick Cornett, formidable. Obviously, he's got a huge base of support here in Oklahoma County, which is just absolutely critical to win in a statewide race. It's very hard to win a statewide race, governor, U.S. senator, whatever it may be, without winning Oklahoma County. He's known not only as a mayor but a sportscaster, and he's got a huge advantage. He is not well known in Tulsa. He's got people trying to change that, but anyway, he's got an automatic following.
And you had indicated early on, as you just said, Oklahoma County, a lot of times
it can decide it. Yeah, it's tough to win without Oklahoma County.
Moving on,
if not impossible.
To the candidate you mentioned earlier, Dan Fisher.
Dan Fisher, Yukon pastor, served in the state legislature for 4 years. he would deny being a one-issue candidate, abortion, but that's basically where all of his focus is, not just on, usually the way it's talked about. He's for abolishing all abortions. He would shut down every abortion clinic immediately if he could.
Oklahoma auditor and the inspector, Mr. Gary Jones.
Gary Jones, he former chairman of the Oklahoma Republican Party, which makes him known in all 77 counties. He's actually known really for helping build kind of the grassroots party up, and so he still has a lot of people that remember him from that. He's won 2 statewide races. He's auditor and inspector.
Current Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb.
Todd Lamb is well known in every county himself. It's probably right now, probably most people would say for a runoff right now it's Cornett and Lamb with
those two.
One of the candidates you're about to mention as a possibility might sneak in.
Could be Tulsa attorney Gary Richardson.
Gary Richardson.
There's only 2 candidates left, but we'll talk Gary Richardson.
Gary Richardson ran in 2002. He's a Tulsa attorney. Big issue is turnpikes. You're going to hear about turnpikes tonight. Gary Richardson absolutely hates turnpikes, wants them abolished, considers state government to be corrupt, and he'll talk a lot about that.
And then that leads us into Kevin Stitt,
who is kind of the fresh face in this race. He businessman, started a mortgage company that's in the Tulsa area, Gateway Mortgage. He's got a ton of money, a lot of his own money, but he's also raised a surprising amount of money. I think he has raised more money than Mitt Cornett. So I think he's sitting on $3 million. There are a lot of people in this year who are looking for somebody who's not in state government, who's not considered part of the problem. He will get a look from a lot of people.
Let's take a live look at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art auditorium, starting to fill up on this Monday night as the candidates are finding their ways to the seats and the audience is finding their ways to their seats as well. Again, a live stream throughout tonight. Begins around 6:30 and ends around 8 o'clock, so 90 minutes of questions and answers. And Chris, what should we be watching for, listening for, and what will you be watching and listening for tonight?
I've been listening mainly for questions from our panelists that I haven't heard them answer before. I've heard a lot in all these forums and things that I've been to. I've heard a lot of questions, but I think some social issues may come up tonight. I'm interested in how they respond to those, and I'm interested in how some of the candidates who haven't responded before to the question of whether they would have signed the $500 million revenue package that the legislature approved in March to give teachers a pay raise. I'm interested in how they respond to the question if it's asked about that package.
We touched a little bit on the polling, but where are we so far in this race? You mentioned 2 of the front runners, Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb, former Mayor Mitt Cornett, perhaps Kevin Stitt, but how much value do we place in polling at this point? Not
a lot. I think a lot of people that follow politics, just off the top of their head say those 2 guys. And that's, there have been very few polls. They've been at the top of them. The undecided is absolutely huge. I saw one poll early this year with 45%, I believe, undecided. And I think that's where the electorate is right now.
Is that unusual? Or
I don't know if it's unusual, really. But I think it's probably common in a year where there's so much discontent, so much dissatisfaction with the government that even if you know Todd Lamb or know Mitt Cornett, you're going to weigh very carefully, whether they should be the chief executive here.
I'll give you a chance to talk about the Democratic side as well. That's also the race you're following on the Libertarian side too. What are you seeing on those sides?
Well, it's hard to see much of a race for the Democratic front runner, Drew Edmondson. He served as Attorney General for 16 years. He's got a lot of money. He's got a good amount of money, and his only opponent is a former state senator here from the Oklahoma City area, Connie Johnson, who, I think she has some appeal. I don't think she has the resources to really wage a statewide campaign. So, I think that'd be tough for her to.
Very good. This is the GOP side tonight. We have 6 candidates on stage. We'll be tossing to the stage here briefly. I'm alongside Chris Casteel. Again, you can follow him on the Twitter at NewsOKPolitics. Ben Felder will be moderating on the stage. And Chris, a little known fact is Ben Felder's socks tonight, George Washington socks.
Oh, okay. Father of our country socks.
Father of our country socks. He said that was the most patriotic thing he had, so he was wearing the George Washington socks tonight.
That's good. Can't do much better than George Washington.
Be alongside Carla Hinton, Adam Wilmoth on stage asking questions, alongside Justin Wingertour, who will be monitoring questions from the internet. Chris, let's just throw it to the stage, as I think we're about 5 minutes out now, I'm being told. Well, there you have it. Tales from the campaign trail it is, Chris.
We'll talk again.
We'll talk again. What are some of the things you've liked about the campaign so far this year? And let me hedge this as I interrupt you. My apologies. For the longest time, you were in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I was.
Covering the federal, our congressman out in Washington. Now you're back in Oklahoma on the local side following this race.
What I like about it,
ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started in a moment, but we have a full house.
So if you have any it's been a long time since I've covered a campaign because we haven't had any good campaigns. The congressional side is just fun to visit here.
So what's the spirit perhaps you're seeing in the towns? Are they fired up about this, or is there disgust, or is it like, yeah, this is America, this is another campaign?
Yeah, it depends on the town. I mean, I've seen some crowds that were really fired up and asked really tough questions, and others that were a lot more mellow about it, where I couldn't quite gauge what they were interested in. So I think it varies by the community. I think the problems are not common, around the state. I mean, some states or some cities are hurting worse than others.
Interesting. How do you think the candidates have held up to the questions in the various places?
Well, they're ready for most of them. I think they've heard, they've heard them, most of them before. I mean, we were able to get them all on the teacher strike, which I thought was, they weren't necessarily wanting to answer so much, but we got them on that. We've got them on issues like guns, marijuana. They all say that they're against that. So I think for the most part they've heard them all so far.
I mentioned you've been on the federal side of things covering our congressman for so long. What's the mechanics of running a campaign, needing to get to the runoff before you get to, or the primary before you get to a runoff or the general campaign? What do they have to go for? What are these candidates aiming for, and then does it change for them?
Well, it does. It's really challenging to run a statewide campaign. You can't just do it all on TV or radio. You have to organize in every county. You have to have people, especially in the big counties, but even in some of the smaller ones. It doesn't do you any good if they don't get out to vote. And that's why you need really committed volunteers. And that is just a house by house thing that people have to do at some point, is to knock on doors, give people literature. You have to do all of that stuff. As much as we want to think about Facebook and TV and all that, those components of the modern campaign, it still comes down to
shaking hands and kissing babies.
Shaking hands, people. I did a story a few years ago on James Lankford, the now U.S. Senator, and his first campaign for the House in 2010, when he was an unknown against some people that had served in the legislature, even in the legislature. And he was kind of gigging me one time about, you did all these stories about our Facebook connections. He had been a youth director at Falls Creek Baptist Church Camp, and so all these kids knew him. They all used Facebook. But he goes, what we did is we got Henry Bellman's book, when he campaigned for governor in 1962, and went by that book, which is basically just hitting the streets and knocking on doors and getting your volunteers out.
I noticed on your 6 things to watch for tonight, a couple of candidates, Mick Cornett, a large group of interns, Dan Fisher, small group statewide, and perhaps the social media. So you're seeing a little bit of the smaller splinter efforts? Yeah.
I mean, we'll see a lot of their supporters in there, but again, it's about how many you get to the polls on election day. That's just what it comes down to. They got to vote.
All right, so there's a forum tonight. Again, 6 of the candidates will be here. But Chris, looking ahead, what's next for these guys over the next 9 weeks?
I think the thing that we will see more of, we'll see a lot of, is TV. That's coming now. You've had a few of them have been on Lamb and Stitt, Todd Lamb and Kevin Stitt have been on TV pretty continuously for the past few weeks. Everybody else is going to have to get up on TV now, and I think a lot of those ads will be negative eventually. Who they take shots at, I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see, who takes shots at him.
We'll see tonight. It's the Oklahoman's Forum. We'll throw it to the stage, and Ben Felder.
Welcome to the Oklahoman's GOP Gubernatorial Candidate Forum. I'm Chris Reen, president of the Oklahoman, and I want to thank you for being here today. Let me start by saying thanks to all of you in this audience. You're the ones that get it. You're engaged, and you are understanding of the importance of educating and informing.